Christmas is still just 20 days away, but don't tell that to the NC State Wolfpack. Gift wrapped a win and handed it over to Texas.
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Wolfpack Nation? Welcome to your Wednesday evening post-game live. This will also serve as your Thursday podcast. So if you're in here right now, welcome. If you're listening to us on Thursday, hello on Thursday. It's time to get locked in with Locked On. Thanks for making Locked On Wolfpack your first listen each and every day. Free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Our Thursday podcast sponsor is FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place just a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 back in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. Head on over to FanDuel.com in order to get started. As always, I'm Grayson Boone, joined by former Wolfpack defensive tackle Kenton Gibbs. It's a late one. I understand it's getting close to midnight Eastern time. NC State basketball is in the ACC SEC Challenge in the Lenny on Wednesday evening, and they completely blew it. They hand the game away to Texas late. The second half, we got obliterated in rebounding, wasted way too many chances at the charity stripe, could not convert any of our foul shots. I think we missed 8 in total, and that was your story. You had the game, I wouldn't say in hand. You had a really good shot to take this game in the end, literally handed it over to Texas, and so it goes.
I think the worst part about this game is a lot of what you said there. You cannot, you absolutely cannot have your opponent shoot 50% from the free throw line and you're worse than them.
Yeah.
That's an actual thing that happened in this game. Texas shot 50% from the free throw line. We shot 42.9%. That is absolutely abysmal. Grayson, quick question. How many points did we lose this game by?
4 points.
4 points. And how many points do you think we left at the free throw line tonight?
8 to be exact.
8 to be exact. So you're telling me we win this game twice over if you convert all those free throws. If you convert half, you at least get it to overtime. And half puts you at 10 of 14. It doesn't put you at some indelible, like, oh, man, we could never get here type of free throw percentage. So, we've talked about this all year long, and this is a lot like what we said about football. And I know people are saying, you talked about this all year long. You're only at game 8. Well, have we not talked about this in the earlier games where we were, beating on teams as well? Did we not talk about this after the exhibition as well? Hey, we have to be able to make free throws. If you're going to be undersized, you cannot be undersized and a poor three-point shooting team and a poor free throw shooting team. Those 3 things will spell out absolute doomsday scenarios for you every single time because, like you talked about, you were thoroughly out-rebounded in the second half. You could not hit an open shot. You could not hit from the stripe. You get what you get. What do you expect there?
Yeah, it's tough because we shot decently from three-point land tonight. Dontre Styles finally connected on a couple. You got one from Ben Middlebrooks. The three-point shooting, it really wasn't that big of an issue. You were 5 of 14. But when you go 6 of 14 from the free throw line, that's pathetic. And that was some of the early indications we had talking about that exhibition game and some of the early non-conference games where we're shooting close to like 50% from the foul line. I'm like, well, I would hope this is a one-off. Maybe it's early in the year. They're still struggling out of the gate. We'll see how this goes. No, I think they are a very poor foul shooting team. You reach the point, you're 8 games in, you're going to be 10 games in before you blink. That's a third of your season. That is becoming like who you are. If you can't convert at the foul line, chance after chance after chance, we'll get into the specifics. So Trey Johnson for Texas, he was their freshman, number 20 on the court. That is the equivalent of just playing an NBA player. Like, he is that good at such a young age. Michael O'Connell baited him into a couple very freshman fouls, which gave the opportunity for 1-and-1s. Brick. You talk about leaving points on the floor in a crucial moment of this game. This is like when we're tied or down 1, down 2, and you're just giving away foul shots all night long. that becomes the story of this game. And that is why we lost this game. For once, it wasn't because of the poor 3-point shooting. It really wasn't even because of the turnovers. Texas had 3 more tonight than we did. So I thought we did a relatively good job of taking control of the ball. We were generating steals. I think, surprising enough, we even have more blocks than Texas had tonight. So the defense, all in all, was relatively fine. Again, you only hold Texas to 63 points. Texas's freshman was very good. You bait him into those bad fouls, and you can't take advantage. And that just speaks to our point. If you can't take advantage of the opportunities that other teams are giving you when you're already not a good shooting team and you struggle even inside and rebounding, that's another big point I'll touch on in a second. What are you good at? You have to find something to be excellent at. Because if you're just mid at everything across the board, have fun trying to make the tournament this year.
And I want to talk about something else here because you said Dontrez Styles found his 3-point shot, and therefore, the team found theirs. Well, the starters in particular, do you want to guess what they shot from 3-point range in this game?
Other than Styles, it was pretty ugly, I think. Maybe like 3 of 10 or 3 of 11.
3 of 10 or 3 of 11. Close, Grayson. Very close. But in terms of what our starters shot on this game, they were 2 of 8.
There you go.
Like that's, again, you're not going to win with 25% production from the 3-point line. And then even when you look at what the starters did from the line, it wasn't all that great. You talk about Michael O'Connell with 2 bricks. You talk about Marcus Hill with 3 of those things. You talk about Ben Middlebrooks with 1 as well. Again, you're never, ever, ever going to run into a good situation when, again, by scheme, you put yourself behind the 8 ball in terms of size. So if you are going to be under, we've seen this time and time again. Those D'Antoni coach Rockets were able to win at any clip because those small guys they put on the court could shoot.
Yeah.
Those small lineups, those lineups where you're not going with a bunch of big guys, they could light it up from deep. They could spread you out and use dribble penetration to make it really, really tough to defend all the different options they can go to. Again, thank God for Dontrez Styles, but if it wasn't for him, what was the solution? What was the spacing on the floor? The answer, there was none.
Yeah, and now I want to talk about rebounding because that was another massive factor of why we do end up losing this game. At the half, I had tweeted a couple thoughts. We were doing really good at rebounding at the half. In fact, we were up 4, but you finished this game down 7 in the rebounding department. You got obliterated on the boards in the second half. And when, again, I talk about this all the time, but when you're giving teams second and third and fourth opportunities to beat you, and especially when it's a team the caliber as Texas, they are going to beat you unless they have a completely off night, which I wouldn't exactly call it that, but Texas wasn't spectacular, but they're good enough to beat you when you just keep giving them opportunities. And I kind of want to not necessarily call out, but Brandon Huntley Hatfield, I mentioned this early in the season, he's just not quite as physical as I need him to be. I mean, he's 6'10". We're relying on him to play massive minutes in the front court. 5 rebounds is not going to cut it. When Michael O'Connell is out rebounding you, I have a problem with that. Now, that's not exactly linear because, rebounds go all over the place, but I haven't been consistently seeing enough physicality and toughness inside from Brandon Huntley Hatfield. Middlebrooks a little bit in the same vein. Middlebrooks is he's a bull in a china shop. We know what he is, but we're just not getting the interior presence to bring down enough boards to stay consistent on that note. And I think this is a spot where you really, really miss a guy like Mo Diarra. And it's tough because he became a rebounding machine in the postseason. And you see how quickly this team is different without somebody of that caliber. So it's tough. And I think it's especially tough knowing that coming into the season, I specifically named rebounding and 3-point shooting looks on paper to be the Achilles heel of this team. We're 8 games in, and I think I nailed it. Rebounding and 3-point shooting are 2 things that we're just not doing well enough to consistently win basketball games right now. And so that's a massive problem. Again, you hand this game away to Texas. You had multiple opportunities to grab a hold of this game and run away with it. Can't control the ball, can't hit a foul shot, can't find any kind of shot, to be honest with you. Far too much dribbling tonight. This is the result that you get.
You know, the thing that I want to point out that you said there is you talked about what you knew this team's Achilles heel was going to be coming into the season. As somebody with 2 formerly ruptured Achilles, I know what a shaky one looks like. And the reality of this thing is, Grayson, you're absolutely right. We have to accept that at this point in time in the season, this is who we are, but we can improve something. And so the call to action for Keats from me would be find something to make this team elite at. Because against really good teams, we haven't seen it. And some people say dribble penetration is what this team is elite at. Some people say, hey, you've got a lot of guys that can get to the cup whenever they want to. And I would say, fine, but how are they finishing at the cup? It's great for them to get to the basket and draw those fouls, but if they're getting to the basket drawing fouls and then we're shooting 42% from the line, did you really help?
Yeah.
So, that's kind of where I am with this thing in terms of Coach Keats. Is he's using the old Tom Izzo method. Get your head beat in early by a bunch of really, really good teams, and then your team figures it out toward the end because they're like, all right, we've got to turn this around. We've got to tie ourselves to one another and kind of lock out everybody but us, because there are not good things being said about this Wolfpack team right now, and rightfully so.
There are a couple good notes of energy from a couple guys in particular. I want to touch on that real quick, but first, a word from tonight's sponsor. That is FanDuel. Tackle NFL action all season long on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 back in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, all in just one singular place. When you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the very same page that you place all of your bets. Head on over to FanDuel.com in order to join today. You'll get started with $150 back in bonus bets if that first pesky $5 bet wins. That's FanDuel.com in order to get started. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, middle portion of our post-game live here on Wednesday evening. Again, this will also serve as your Thursday podcast episode, recapping a 63-59 loss at the hands of the Texas Longhorns. Energy was something I did like from NC State. However, it was not there early. We looked kind of like a turtle in a turtle shell in the very beginning. We played a little tight. We looked kind of scared, but that's when Marcus Hill took over. And we've kind of been waiting for this type of performance from Marcus Hill. He's a little ball of energy when he does get in the paint. I think he's still kind of figuring out what he can and cannot get away with at the P4 level when he gets down in the paint as an undersized guard. But I love what he brings in terms of energy. He's all over the place. He's very good around the rim if he's not getting swatted by a 7-footer. But Marcus Hill was a definitive bright spot tonight, especially offensively. The way he can knife through the paint. I don't love his jump shot. In fact, it looks very broken to me. He knocked down a couple shots. So if you hit him, I'll keep my mouth shut. I don't love him taking really anything out of the paint. And again, if it falls, then fine. But he definitely excels around the cup, and we got to consistently find ways to make him effective down low.
Yeah, I like that. And another thing I liked was I talked a lot about how NC State needed to master getting stops without turnovers. And in this game, don't get me wrong, if you're just a box score watcher, you think Trey Johnson dominated this game, but NC State made it tough on him. It was not like that kid had a free run to the basket whenever he wanted. He was hitting some shots. Some of those shots from deep, you look at and you're like, hey, he's going to be a top 10 pick next year. You tip your cap,
no doubt,
and you move forward, because those are the type of plays that that caliber of player makes. And that's the type of play that only a player of that caliber can make. So you kind of live with it. You kind of move on from there. But I did like that our perimeter defense as a unit, as a collective, has picked up in a way that we can force a guy that we know, hey, he's not going to have to wait in that green room very long in terms of the NBA draft. You made him work for it. And that's the biggest thing. Even if he has a hot night where it's like, hey, he's going to hit some shots in guys' faces. He's going to hit some shots where your hand is right up. You kind of live with it.
There's another comment I saw. Let me grab it real quick. Chilton Jarrett. O'Connell looked like a different player tonight. I did want to touch on this for just a minute. MOC definitely had a rough night. He was 1 of 8 shooting, 0 for 3 from beyond the perimeter. And I tell you, all 3 of those 3-pointers he had, you couldn't possibly be more wide open than Mike was. Couldn't get one to fall. It was a tough night. But what I loved seeing from him the rest of the game was the way he still made an impact despite being cold. And we talk about that a lot. That really stems from our frustrations with Terquavion Smith a couple years ago. What Michael could have done is turtled and kind of pouted and stomped his feet and said, "This ain't my night. I guess I'll try it again some other time." No, that's not what he did. Instead, I think he had 7 assists. That's a really good number. And he was one of our leading rebounders, if not number. Yes, Michael O'Connell was the leading rebounder tonight.
Yeah, 6
That's
rebounds.
finding a way to still make a positive impact on the game, even when your shot is not falling. He was also generating a couple turnovers late in that game that gave us additional opportunities to take the lead and potentially run away with it. So it was a bad night, I would say, for Michael O'Connell, but the way that he fought and still found other ways to impact the game, that is my point guard. That's why he's so valuable to have on the floor as much as you can possibly have him on there. We talked about this last year, same deal this year. This team looks very disconjointed when he's not on the floor. And when he is, there is like a sense of calmness. Now, hopefully you can get him to bury a couple of these wide open threes, but nonetheless, he is probably like the most important person on this team. And I don't think that's hyperbole at all.
So let me ask you a question, Grayson. People in the chat are talking about the twin tower look we had with Ben Middlebrooks and Huntley Hatfield. Do you think a smaller lineup is what this team needs, or do you think that, you know, the lineups that we put out were sufficient? Because me personally, I'm leaning towards, and don't get me wrong, I like Huntley Hatfield and Middlebrooks, but I'm leaning towards you got to pick one or the other in terms of what you are what you got going on here. I really and truly think this is one of those moments where you may have needed to go a little smaller than we did.
It's a tough question because I don't think there is a definitive answer yet. They're still kind of tinkering with these type of things. I like the idea, I think, of having both of them on the floor more than the actual product we've gotten so far. Yeah. I think we're the most effective when Dontrez Styles is playing that stretch 4. And especially when you saw tonight, he can knock down a couple of those threes. That's probably your best type of lineup. I don't know. It's tough because there's some points where I love having Middlebrooks out there. And there's other times where it's like it's too much Benergy. And so then you like what Brandon Huntley Hatfield can give you. But again, he's just not as physical as I think this team needs him to be. So it's definitely a little bit of a juggled answer here. But I think to answer your question, finally, I don't love the twin tower look. I think we need more floor spacing when you have Styles out there or Hill out there. That's your best type of offense for State up to this point. But another guy I want to talk about is Jaden Taylor. Mm-hmm. We've been critical of Jaden Taylor. He gets a lot of criticism online as well. Another guy that had a pretty tough night tonight. He was 3 of 10, 0 for 2 from deep. He did hit both of his free throws, 4 boards, 2 assists. Too much dribbling from Jaden Taylor. And here's the problem with this is because State can't not have Taylor on the floor. He's your best on-ball defender, I think, by a country mile. And so he is so valuable that you need to have him on the court. Again, one of those guys, you need to have him out there virtually as much as you possibly can. But he's doing too much offensively. He's doing too much of the ball handling, too much of the creation offensively. But that's the part where you're handcuffed, is because you have to find a way to get something out of him if he's going to be on the floor. I don't know what definitively to do with Jaden Taylor. I think you basically get what you can get, but you're going to have nights like this one, like you saw tonight, 3 of 10 shooting. That's quickly become his identity, and some nights it's going to kill you.
I think you live with what Jaden Taylor is.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people are not going to like that, but I think you live with it. I think you live with it for this reason. Even that last play, right? If you go back and watch the film, there's a fun thing in basketball, a fun little concept called verticality, where basically a defender can, do whatever they want in terms of contesting your shot so long as they stay straight up and down. But in this instance, Cedric's arms were clearly extended forward when Jaden Taylor shoots that shot. With that being said, you've got to know you're never going to get that call. That's literally never going to be a call that you get in any meaningful basketball. It's just not going to happen. So when you look at that last kind of, not just the shot, but that possession overall, what even was that? You get what I'm saying? Like, Coach Keats has been so much better this year about drawing up motion and drawing up action to get guys headed toward the rim where we have a potential mismatch. I didn't see that on that last possession. Correct me if I'm wrong, Grace, but I didn't see it at all. It looked like we went from being a team that was using that motion, that was using all of these different types of screen and roll actions, that was using all these different things to, all right, Jaden, ISO him up. Show us what you got. And it's like, who do you think he is? T-Mac in 03? Like that's not how this game is going to be won. And so you go away from who brought you to the dance.
Yeah.
And you get what you get. You know, a lot folks are talking about, hey, I would have liked Dontrez Styles to take last shot. I get that. I get that. Because the guy who ties it up, hey, I'm not never gonna be mad at you at getting another crack at it. So again, I look at that last possession and I say this is tough, but I will say the silver lining for this team is, as much as I'm going to joke about this being the Izzo method, it really does work. It really does. Having your team lose these games early, having your team kind of go up against this type of thing early, what you see is your team gets better through figuring out this is what good teams do. This is what good teams look like. This is how we have to finish in order to get things done. And again, like Grace and I talked about, we're seeing Achilles heels that are not brand new. We're seeing things that are like we expected to have a problem. And it's hard to get something corrected when you're winning. So maybe this little 3-game losing streak is what was needed to kick this team in the rear end and say, hey, get your behind going. Make your shots at the free throw line. We're not good enough to not pay attention there. Hey, MOC and company, the guards, we need more in terms of your three-point shooting. We need to space this thing out in some way, somehow. Marcus Hill is a prolific driver, but you know what is going to stop that? You know what's going to stop that? 7-footers waiting at the rim for him because there's nobody to help alleviate that pressure.
Yeah, I mean, if it were me, I want either Styles or Hill to have the ball in their hands for that last shot. You ride the hot hand. Those two led your offense basically the entire night. I get kind of wanting Jaden to facilitate a little bit coming out of that timeout. I want to say there was like 14, 16 seconds, somewhere in that. I think coming out of that timeout, you want Jaden to be aggressive, but if it's not there, give it up. We can't have you dribble for 12 of those seconds and just run into the paint and try and draw a foul for a prayer, because that's how you get swatted. And then that's it. So I'm sorry. It just connects to my thought. Jaden Taylor, he can't be your primary function of the offense.
I agree. He's not a primary function. No.
Styles needs to shoot more and probably take more. If you want to drive to the paint, you got to look for Marcus Hill. Not to say Jaden's not incapable, but I mean, Hill has much more success when he takes it to the rack, and I would much rather have the ball in either of their hands in that situation. So tough loss tonight. Really gift wrap this one, handed it away. You miss 8 foul shots. You get completely dominated on the boards in the second half. That's your story. And I think it's so frustrating because this state team, they are playing pretty good defense. And we haven't even really talked about the Purdue and BYU losses. It's not that they're self-destructing, they're giving up easy buckets. They're making the other teams work for it, but they just can't be consistent enough on the offensive side, and that's why we stand where we stand. So really tough loss tonight. Tough loss, or tough look for the ACC in this ACC-SEC challenge. I think we still only have one win. I know Duke was winning. I have not looked at the final score for that one quite yet, but pretty ugly. It felt like we could have at least carried a little bit of water. Handed it away tonight, 63-59 loss to Texas. Coming up next, we're going to round this out with a little bit of football talk. It was early National Signing Day on Wednesday. Turned out to be a pretty good day for the Pack. This comes after a quick word from our sponsors. All right, last couple minutes here of our post-game live on Wednesday evening. This also, again, serves as your Thursday episode. It was early National Signing Day for NC State football on Wednesday. We got the majority of the guys that we thought we'd be getting. I saw that Kentrell Reinhardt, the running back from Ohio, that Kenton loves, decided that he would not be signing, which probably means his options are still open. I saw a little bit of chatter about why that is or is not. However, for everyone else, Will Wilson in the bag. I am obsessed with Will Wilson and his game and what he will bring with him to Raleigh. We talked a lot about how CJ Bailey is the future of this program, at least in 2025. I've said it before. I've said it. I'll say it again here. I'm even higher on the prospects of Will Wilson than I am for CJ Bailey. So I love that Will Wilson has put pen to paper. He's coming to Raleigh. Kenton, who's the 2025 player that you are the most excited about in this class?
You know, we talk about the receivers being loaded and having an amazing receiver room. I really look at one guy out of this recruiting class, and I say to myself, even in a loaded receiving room, this guy might be able to crack crack some lineups for some playing time right away. Mr. Jarrell Boulder. Let me tell you something. That kid, when you talk about body control, when you talk about the ability to high point a football at just a very, very high clip, and then you say to yourself, well, you know, he can high point a football, but is he fast enough to break away? Does he have that even leaving speed? Does he have I am telling you, that young man is the whole package at wide receiver. He can do it all. Obviously, he's a high schooler, so he has things to improve in terms of route running and all that good stuff in certain ways. But the only guy that I have seen that I would say, like, oh, yeah, he's by far and away a more complete receiver coming into this program than him is Keenan Jackson. That's the only guy that I've seen in recent memory where I'm like, hey, that guy, he's ready to play right now. That's a plug-and-play guy right away. But I'm telling you something. Jarrell Boulder, he could be competing for some he could be competing for some burn right away in Raleigh because he's phenomenal. He really is. I watch his film, and every time I watch it, I start salivating a little bit just thinking of the ways a good offensive coordinator could use this wide receiver and pass catcher group.
This is going to come across a little bit petty, but hear me out. When you have guys like Jarrell Boulder coming in behind this 2024 season, that's why it can soften the blow of a Casey Concepcion just that much more. Based on, also bringing back, hopefully, the rest of the band here. But Jarrell Boulder is the realest of deals. I encourage all of y'all listening to this, go watch his tape if you have not seen it. He is going to be a talent to behold in Raleigh in 2025. Would not be surprised at all if he does, in fact, get quite a bit of snaps here in this offense. Another thing that I love to see in this 2025 class is the emergence of big-ass offensive linemen. And we've been waiting for this shift to get into 2J's guys from the last regime at offensive line here at NC State. He is bringing some mooses, some meese. I've used that joke before. I'm going to say it again. Whatever the plural of moose is, they are currently signing to come to Raleigh in 2025. I hope I don't butcher this name. I think it's Takayan Whitsett out of the state of Tennessee. 4-star, 6'5", 265, and you pluck him out of the Vols' backyard. That's a huge recruiting win for Coach 2J. And, that I think we talked about this maybe last offseason when this class kind of started getting formulated. You see a shift to these bigger, bulkier offensive linemen that 2J is trying to bring in. Love to see that. Michael Gibbs is another one from Wilmington, 6'4", 305. We could certainly find a way to get him in the lineup. Cage Payne, hello. If that's not an offensive lineman name, I don't know what is. 6'3", 280. These are big dudes coming in to play for Coach 2J. So I think Coach 2J has gotten a lot of criticism, obviously, because the offensive line has struggled pretty early on in both of his 2 seasons here. But now I think year 3, that's when you really get a good verdict on what kind of Coach 2J is or is not, because these are now going to be his guys. You have to replace, 3 of our offensive linemen, either with guys that are currently here or maybe even freshmen that come in to make an impact. He's bringing some big boys with him, and if they can start pushing people around, maybe we will run the ball effectively.
My biggest thing is that we just need to do that earlier in the season. 2J has shown the ability to coach up guys who can maul, even out of, guys who may not necessarily be his guys. He's shown the ability to coach that up. Just figure out a way to get it earlier in the season. Whatever it is that you figure out every year around week 8 or so, because it's the strangest thing I've ever seen, Grayson. The
Yeah.
competition ramps up at the end of the year. You would think the first 4 games would be the ones where you put up these gaudy rushing numbers, and then it starts to taper off as the competition gets better. NC State does the exact opposite. Every year we're like, can we run the ball on Western Carolina? Is that a possibility? Is that something we can do? And then at the end of the year, we're like, Dirty Foot Club, you don't belong here. Get out of the club immediately. It's like, dude, take that, but bring it to game 1. So, I 1,000% agree with you in terms of the offensive linemen getting bigger and just being bulkier. And I'll tell you something, man. We have multiple classes of pretty good offensive linemen coming in here, and I'm excited about them. I'm excited to see them get developed here because, if we want to take it way back, and this isn't actually way back, but you think about Big Ick coming in. There's a 3-star guy. He was a 3-star guy, right? He was unheralded. He was the lesser of the twins, and he left here as the first offensive player drafted. So I'm very interested to see how some of these offensive linemen develop, because I'll tell you what, if you look down the line 2-3 years from now, you're looking at potentially C.J. Bailey's senior year, Terrell Anderson, Keenan Jackson, all those guys, Jonathan Paylor's senior year. What does that look like? What does that look like? You keep them here and build up some of these buffet busters.
And I think 2 more X factors. This will be my last point on the 2025 recruiting class. Gus Ritchie, who's a tight end, he's going to be a fan favorite. He infamously, or I guess famously for our side of the tracks, flipped from UNC to NC State, and he's been a massive recruiter for this 2025 class, and even beyond in the 2026 class. He's been a big ambassador for NC State. I'm telling you right now, if you don't already love him from what you've seen on social media, he is going to be a fan favorite at tight end. Not to mention, he's also really good. He's a big body tight end. He can block well, pass catch well. He's going to be a stud. And the second guy I want to shout out is Isaac Sowells. His dad has been on these lives a couple times, the number 1 center in the state of Kentucky. So these are guys like we've talked about in the past. It's so big for NC State to reach out of other states' cookie jars and say, number 1 player in your state. No, we'll take that and we'll bring him back over here and see what we can build in Raleigh. So Isaac Sowells, he's going to more than likely play center, one of the highest rated centers in the 2025 class. That's a really good get for 2J and the gang. So I think this 2025 class is a little bit underrated. I think they're somewhere in the 40s all told, because we've had a couple guys come and go, but I really like some of these guys, and I think they can have very bright futures in Raleigh.
Let me tell you something. I don't think that there's any other recruit that loves the Wolfpack in the same way that Gus Ritchie does.
Yeah.
I mean, he loves the way, and that's not to disrespect anybody or say that. No. That young man, when you talk about guys who play for the name.
Look, here he is in the chat.
Hey, we're excited to see him. We're excited to see Spike Souls. Thank you so very much for correcting us, Mr. Souls. We appreciate it. But with that in mind, I mean, Gus really, really loves the pack to an extent that is, I'm telling you, man, that guy right there, he's, again, when you talk about players that are program changers and culture changers, to where even if he does not pan out athletically, which I highly doubt, by the way, I highly doubt that he does. It's you need certain types of guys to build your team into what they're supposed to be. Guys who love the university, love what it's about, love the culture. He's one of those guys.
Yeah, Gus Ritchie. When we talk so much about the NC State culture and what it means beyond the walls of that the fans can see in that locker room, Gus Ritchie is like the living embodiment of everything that Coach Dorn has tried to build in 13 years. He has an excellent personality. It bleeds into everyone around him. That's like the ultimate locker room guy, the ultimate teammate type of guy. And again, if you haven't seen anything related to Gus Ritchie online, just do a little bit of digging. It'll take you like 40 seconds. You're going to fall in love with this kid. So cannot wait to get all of these guys in the 2025 class to Raleigh. I think a little bit over half of them will be early enrollees. So get them on campus, get them coached up, get them with Thunder in the training room. Get these boys ready to roll in 2025, because before you know it, spring football is right around the corner. Well, folks, that'll do it for us in this post-game Wednesday evening. Again, I know it's late. Thank you all so much every time we do one of these. It doesn't matter how late it is. Y'all are always in here with us. Thank you for joining us. Be sure to hit that like button, drop your comments in the comment box, mash that subscribe button if you have not already. Last reminder, this is the Thursday podcast episode, so we will see you, I guess, not on Thursday other than this, but also on Friday. So until then, y'all, go Pack.
Go Pack.